Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to the final session of Scala Days Europe 2018. It's good to see the room, I think, is almost completely full. And I've had a fantastic time. Have you all had a good time?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's for me been one of the most exciting Scala Days in some time, and I'm happy to have been to so many interesting talks and seen so many fun and exciting new ideas coming out. And I don't think anyone should be in any doubt that this community and the people in it are alive and kicking with wonderful, interesting, exciting, intelligent ideas that will define the future for Scala programmers for many years to come. And I think I'm super excited in particular about the keynote we had 2 days ago, which I think will set the scene for Scala for the next 10 or maybe 20 years. So I think this is the moment when a lot will be changing. And with changes come challenges. And I think a lot of those challenges will be in the form of questions, which now is your opportunity to ask. So I have a panel here of 5 wonderful people from the Scala community, and 5 wonderful humans and a dog from the Scala community. And I will introduce them, and I will ask each person 2 questions, and I would like a single word answer to each of these. Starting on my left is Heather Miller, a professor at Northeastern University and head of the Scala Center. Can we have a round of applause for Heather?
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
we will have the same questions for each person, but Heather gets to start.
I get the least amount of time.
If you weren't using Scala, which language would you be using?
PHP.
And so should the Scala Center fail, I'll get in touch with the PHP Center.
Yeah.
And if you weren't in the software industry, which career would you be in? One word.
Neuroscience.
Okay, cool. To my immediate left is Kelly Robinson. Please welcome Kelly. Kelly is the founder of the Scala Bridge initiative to increase inclusivity at Scala events, and is developer advocate at Twilio. Which language would you be using if it weren't Scala?
Python.
Python. Okay, don't judge. And what career would you be in, were it not for the existence of computer science?
I would be Ina Garten.
You would be?
Ina Garten, the Barefoot Contessa. You all need to watch more Food Network.
Well, we've been told. To my right is Adrian Moores, the team lead at Lightbend on the compiler team. Welcome, Adrian. What language did you choose Scala over?
It's like, I only have 1 kid, so at least people don't ask me which my favorite daughter is. Omega. I really like Omega.
Omega. Oh, I'm blindsided by that.
Well, I did glance at your screen, so I was prepared.
And which career would you be in if Lightbend were to hand you your notice?
Bicycle repairman, I think.
Bicycle repairman. Yeah. That's very hipster.
Yeah,
very
well,
hipster
I
answer.
can't grow a beard like you, but I can repair bikes.
To Adrian's right is Martin Ozersky, well known as the developer of languages Pizza and Funnel.
That was the answer to my question.
Right. If it weren't for Scala or Dotty or Pizza or Funnel, which
something you didn't create yourself, I guess.
Which language would you choose?
I didn't know that pizza or funnel was excluded. I would have said pizza.
Okay.
If it's excluded, then modular 3.
I had a suspicion you might say that. And what career would you be in?
COBOL consultant.
If I hadn't done software engineering, I probably would have become an insurance mathematician. And I'm very glad I did not.
Well, I have to say it's the loss of the actuarial industry. And not quite finally, but to Martin's right is Holden. And you are developer advocate at Google and a big data expert.
Nominally.
Yes? Is that correct?
As far as I know, I have not been
said anything
fired.
false. Good, good. Would you please welcome Holden? And which language would you choose were it not for Scala?
Python.
Python, okay.
It
sounds like Python's the winner. We've had two Pythons, so that's one to watch. and what career would you choose?
Barista.
Barista. Good choice. Good choice. So this is our panel.
Wait, hey.
Oh, sorry. Finally, we have Boo.
Right. Make sure to get the title right.
Boo is a dog and the author of Learning How to Bark. Yeah, please welcome Boo. And I don't know if you can answer on Boo's behalf.
We've talked about the questions.
Okay.
So if Boo was not a computer programmer, she would be a dog. And the language she would use besides Scala is barking.
Okay.
Barking, okay.
It's her book.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you. So now that is our panel. And did I miss some? Oh, we have an owl in the audience there. Thanks. Boo is getting excited. Right, let's get to the questions, because I'm sure you all have questions to ask. I have several questions which people submitted on Twitter over the last week or so when I invited the Twitter sphere to offer their...
Oh, shit.
This is already the most exciting panel I've ever been on.
I swear I'm sober right now.
So, does anybody have any questions? If you raise your hand, a microphone will magically make its way to you, and meanwhile, I will ask one of the questions that has been submitted early. But nobody has any questions, right?
Of course.
I
should have opened the bar.
Are there any? So, questions about Dotty, migration to Dotty. Any thoughts? You all.
Keynote answered it all.
Yeah. Everyone knows everything. Let's go for the questions that were submitted early then. And meanwhile, you can try to think of some things to ask. So Eugene Yokata asked, what can the Scala ecosystem do to improve accessibility to data scientists, molecular biologists, and quants who might dabble into occasional R and Python? I'm going to ask Holden this question because it seems almost perfectly designed for you.
I swear I did not create a fake Twitter account to plant questions.
A fake Twitter account with the name Eugene.
Eugene is pretty real.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been a lot more thought than I put into things. Anyways, no. So I think there's a lot of things that are happening and we can do better. One of the start of improvements is cross-platform serialization with Apache Arrow. And it runs on the JVM. I think it would be nicer if it had a Scala API that was not quite so Java 2 Enterprise Edition inspired. It's like, feels very much like, ooh, yes, now I make a row, and now I call all of these setters, and then I call some getters. And it's a little ugly. But it's very fast, and it makes it possible for people to work more efficiently between Scala and Python. I think multi-language notebooks would be a really good thing to see in open source. I think there's a Scala kernel, but certainly one of the things we could do is make a multi-language kernel where we seamlessly support seamlessly, also known as with lots of bugs, passing data between the different systems. And of course, using the latest version of Apache Spark. Whatever. Come on, I gotta get paid.
So I have a sort of more general question, because I go to a lot of Scala events, and I meet a lot of people who call themselves Scala programmers, and indeed are Scala programmers. I don't meet many people who call themselves data scientists.
Yeah.
A few do, but the two communities tend not to interact too much. Can you describe, because you are in both fields.
What is it like over there?
Yeah, what is
So
what is the world like from the point of view of a data scientist?
there are graphs, and it's more than just bar charts.
Okay.
This one time I saw a scatter plot. It changed my life.
Sounds pretty crazy.
No, I mean, like, there's graphing tools, there's more numerical focus, computation tools, obviously. And I mean, there's a lot of mutating state, which makes me sad. But you know, the graphing tools are a lot nicer over in that side of the world. You also see a lot more people from what are traditionally considered like non-traditional computer science backgrounds in the data science space, which I think is amazing because there are no bad habits that we have to like wean them off of, like mutating state. We can just be like, no, this is normal. This is normal. Functional programming is how everyone does it.
Don't go to any other conferences.
Yeah, please stop going to other conferences.
Okay, well,
only-
that's enlightened me a little bit.
But the only thing that's missing are a lot of the numerical libraries that people are in Python use, plus the visualization stuff. So it's kind of,
Oh yeah, no, they're not going to become Scala users.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
No.
mean, I don't know. This seems to me like the biggest prerequisite, which is something that takes decades of, I think, building libraries for. We have some, but I think not nearly the critical mass that they have.
But I think Arrow is like,
Yeah, that's true.
Arrow is the hack solution to that, where I can just start using my Python libraries, or just start with tons of boilerplate code that hopefully someone in this wonderful audience will write. I can start using my Python libraries from Scala and vice versa.
I like it.
Because I don't want to have to rewrite Fortran code into Scala. I don't know how to read Fortran. I don't want to.
Okay. Second time of asking, does anyone in the audience have any questions? Like, there's a question over there. Can the microphone make its way over there? And meanwhile, I will ask... So there's a question here from a Mr. T.
Just Mr. T.
Polecat. Mr. T. Polecat, who says, why are we not in a skittering panic about, I'm sure he is in a skittering panic, about the lack of an approachable, reliable, well-featured editor plugin for Scala? Kelly, do you have any thoughts on why we're... You look like someone who knows about why people should or should not be in skittering panics.
I mean, my answer is always yes, you should be panicking. I mean, I can't speak as much to editor plugins, but I think the topic there of something that's accessible and useful by the community ties back to a lot of the tooling around Scala, which thankfully Heather is organizing a tooling summit. And there's, there was a conference this year that was completely dedicated to Scala tooling, but this ties back to some of the stuff that Holden was talking about, which the tooling in Scala hasn't caught up to the tooling in other languages. I think there's a few reasons for that. There's not as many people that write Scala code as there are the people that write Python code. And I just don't think it's been a focus of the community. Open source software is always hard. You have to find some way to support it. And if your company is not paying you to do it, you're doing it in your spare time. And it's a hard answer, but I think that if you work at a company that either supports tooling or uses tooling that you like, try to get your company to give you time to work on it. Try to get your company to offer financial support if they can. Mm-hmm. Those are always two great ways to support the languages that you use. None of this stuff happens for free.
And just to add to that, I think the whole effort that, this maybe I'm biased, but I'm pretty enthusiastic about the whole Scala Meta development and also the whole semantic DB thingy. This is something that I think it greatly brings down sort of the bar.
Does the audience know about the semantic DB thingy? Can we enlighten them?
They can ask questions.
Yeah. In a few words, it's basically right now it's a compiler plugin that basically runs through your whole code base, and it will kind of have this persisted representation in like a semantic DB file that you can query. And for somebody who might want to write a tool that asks questions about the code that is in whatever that it's looking at, this is a nice way, a very low bar way to ask questions about source code. And I think it's a very cool development.
And language agnostic.
Well,
Eugene tells me it's language agnostic.
Okay. Regardless, I mean, I know Olaf is doing a lot of things with it. There's Scala Fix is based on it.
And this could be a real enabler for tooling in Scala.
Right, but I mean, unrelated to this tooling thing, I mean, we have a little bit of experience actually asking very kind of complicated questions about code patterns across many Scala code bases, and it turned out to be a really convenient API to query. So I think it's a really nice development that people should look into if they're interested in tooling.
One other thing that Martin talked about in his keynote was the fact that Dottie is going to be using, and Tasty is going to be using the language server protocol, which is a new standard. I think it was developed by Microsoft.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be used across all languages for all editors to hopefully develop standards for making editors and making editor plugins. And so that's not something that's unique to Scala, and so I'm grateful that we're thinking ahead to use something like that.
So speaking of thinking ahead, believe it or not, as soon as this panel finishes, I'm going to go into a meeting with several other people from the community to talk about LSP and how we can, this is the working groups that we set up for the language server protocol and other related build protocols that are needed to support an active and vibrant Scala ecosystem of tools for the next many years, I hope. So if you didn't get my email, the people who are on that committee, it's happening after this panel. And I will see you there later. But just going back to Rob Norris's original question, or sort of follow on from that question, is there anything else that we're sort of sleepwalking into? Are we blindsided?
Wait.
Yes.
You're just accepting his premise here. Sorry, I wasn't saying anything. We're not in a skittering panic because we're actually working on it. It's a very leading question, and I disagree with it.
Okay, so yeah, fair point.
So I mean, we should be thinking about what things are important, but let's not immediately imply that we're actually not doing anything about it.
So what are we in a skittering panic about? Or what should we be in a skittering panic about?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I want to say so many things about this. I don't know.
You have an audience, you have a microphone. What more would you like, Adrian?
Well, I mean, I'll just say that hyperbole, nor yes, can I just that's very calming, thank you. I think, hyperbole nor panic are going to magically conjure editor plugins. So, I think things like organizing the working groups. And,
so the solution is reasoned debate.
Well, that and money.
and money.
I mean, the hidden thing here is that no one pays for tooling, right? And I'm sitting here, I'll put my Lightband hat on that I didn't bring. It's really hard to motivate people to pay for this stuff. So it's great that we have the Scala Center, for example, to do this, through the foundation. But why are you not paying us money to do this? I mean, I don't mean us as in me. I mean us as in if you want to drive this roadmap, then find a way to fund it.
Yeah, I think you can make the observation that of the top 10 programming languages in use today, Scala, which I think is probably just in the top 10. Be fair, Martin. It's maybe the least well.
It's just a number.
Least well funded in terms of resources available. So we're already doing a lot with
I think so.
Less money than many of the languages we're competing with. So I think we deserve a pat on the back for what we've done so far, but we need more, I think. And sure. I would point to the Scala Center as a wonderful vehicle for doing that.
Yeah, well, we're trying. And I think also, again, I'm just going to mention this thing that we're doing tomorrow, this contributors thingy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
This contributor summit. So, I mean, the idea is to bring together all these different parties that care about stuff like compilers, tools, libraries that we all kind of depend on, put them in a room together and sort of help them all sort of, understand the directions that disparate pieces are going in, and maybe we can have some agreements about, ways to go, ways not to go, and even identify more clearly kind of intermediate goals, and then people could then pick those up, adding a little bit more structure to how we kind of already do it, where it's a little more kind of free form. So I mean, we're trying to do things like this. I mean, perhaps provide a little bit of structure if anybody does want to jump on this crazy bus ride into tools, or libraries, or anything else that we all need.
And that's taking place tomorrow at Zalando. Are there still places available?
Yeah, if somebody contacts me very, very soon, because I need to give these people at Zalando a list of names so they'll let you in the building. So if somebody wants to go and we haven't talked yet, you can send me a message on Twitter and I can put your name on the list.
Okay.
I think we have the microphone head over to...
Yes, yeah, so the microphone is, I think, in the hands of one very patient person.
And we have another patient person over there.
Okay, so we'll have this question first, then we'll go to the person at the front.
Yeah, thank you. Good event. So I have just one short question around Dotty. What next?
What next?
What's next?
What next?
Scala 4?
Scala 4.
Oh my God, let's not think about that one. I think we have enough
Thank you.
A long vacation in Southeastern Asia is next.
You mean, well, how about Scala 3.1?
So I described that as a very patient person.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
My initial question was a bit different, but are you going to have shorter release period for Dotty, for example, after the official release? So because of that, I'm asking what next?
So we currently have a release period of 6 weeks. I don't think we can shorten that further, but we roll out a new release every 6 weeks, so it's time-based, and whatever is in there is in there. I believe we will, once it's Scala 3, we will have longer release periods. What they will be exactly, whether it's 6 months or a year or 2 years, it's way too early to tell. I don't know. It depends on a lot of factors.
And are you expecting there to be new features added in Scala 3.1, 3.2?
Yeah, sure. It doesn't stop, but I mean, not anything as the jump from 2 to 3. That's clear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and we had a question at the front.
Yeah. So, question to Heather. Hi. Have you considered opening a Patreon for us mere mortals to sort of show support to the efforts around
a platform?
Patreon.
A Patreon, like a...
A Patreon. Oh, hey, yeah. So we actually do have a thingy where you can throw money towards it. But it turns out that this is not a very long-term way to fund anything.
Oh, sure, but I mean, we probably don't know about it, or...
It's on the Scala Center website.
All right.
There's a donate button, but it's these are things that they
I'll
tend
pay
not to...
pizzas and beers, but that's something, I guess.
Yeah, but I think though just as a footnote, this kind of small, irregular contributions is really useful for collecting money to give towards like a community organization or something, and that's kind of what I would do it for. But I wouldn't. Solving the IDE problem is not that would not be enough, I think.
So we should also say to people, if you're working for a large company developing Scala, you can sponsor the Scala Center.
That would be very helpful.
And
yes.
The Scala Center very much invites sponsors to support the work it does. We have 8 or 9 sponsors at the moment who are providing a regular income, which is funding the work of people like Heather and Jorge.
Yeah, the Scala Center engineers are paid by the sort of regular donations that come in. And one thing I think is particularly cool about this is that those companies, they are roped into talking to us all the time, which is good for everybody, actually. It turns out that we learn a lot about their use cases, about, it turns out that mono repos are a big deal.
Yes.
Who would have known, right? But it would be good that we would be aware of that if we're working on tools, right? So these are also benefits.
We have regular conversations with Martin is on the advisory board,
right.
Heather is, and it's a way for companies to connect to the people who are changing things in Scala, and at the same time support the development of things that we all need, tools.
But that maybe one company just can't afford to support by themselves. Like you can't expect one company to be like, all right.
The model works because we have people collectively pooling their resources
right.
rather than re-implementing everything themselves. multiple times. So speak to your employers.
All right, after this brief...
Heather, yes, Heather would love to hear from you, as
Yes,
would I,
of course.
or Martin. We're happy to provide any more information on the Scala Center.
But I mean, just to return to your point, like sort of how to fund this kind of stuff is a hard problem.
So could we send the microphone to Daniela at the front, and I will look back over what else was asked on Twitter. Justin Kaiser asked the question. He didn't want to ask it in person. He wanted to ask it early. What do you think are the strengths of the Scala development ecosystem compared to other languages, and where should we improve? Would anyone like to take this? Adrian? Heather?
Oh, Adrian's hiding.
What are we doing well? What are we doing badly?
I think we're pretty good at incremental compilation. I think that's actually something that we did pretty good.
So incremental compilation.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's bad that we needed it, but it's good the way we do it.
Can I ask the audience a question?
Huh?
Can I ask the audience a question?
Sure, yeah.
How many people find the incremental compilation in Scala good? Awesome. How many people find the incremental compilation in Scala not good?
You can. It's fine.
3 people.
We don't see you.
Okay. So yeah, no, that's
The jury's out.
See, don't need to be.
in Spark we have different
Yeah.
views.
Okay, we can talk about that later.
Yeah, okay. We'll get drunk.
But I mean, other things that I think are good about the Scala ecosystem, I mean, in the last couple of years, I think that there's been a lot of banding together that I hadn't seen
Yeah.
before. And I'm super excited about that.
We're really good at coming up with new build tools.
I think Scala can work on its
And JSON
marketing.
libraries.
And JSON libraries, yes.
So, someone said
Yeah.
that build tools are the JSON library of 2018.
Or like the free monads.
We'll see what's produced by the end of the year.
I mean, but there's lots more that we do well, right? We have like Scala fix, we have Scala format, we have, something that is, nicer than Javadoc was in the past, but now has gotten a little bit behind. Scaladoc could use a new coat of paint, and I think it's going to get one.
There are a ton of libraries that people use. I don't know, I mean, if you dig around and look at the stuff that, is the most depended on sort of modules in the ecosystem, but we have a healthy,
Yeah,
pile
for
of
libraries,
libraries
yeah.
that people maintain. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Well, I guess
because
we're
as a
focusing
community,
on
we could just fall back on Java, but we're not. There are a lot of people developing and keeping libraries going. So
the REPL
we should
is
be
another
happy.
one that we take for granted,
Yeah, the REPL we've had for nearly a decade. And how long has Java had one?
Nearly, I don't know. Like when
Does anyone use Java here?
it came with Java 9, right, or something?
So how long has Java had a REPL?
Since Java 9.
1 year, 1 year. So
Good job, Java.
yeah.
Getter 8 templates are also really useful. One thing that we could improve on, though, and this is something really actionable, is adding more Getter 8 templates for sample projects and things that people can get started with.
Yeah,
I was looking at them recently, and there was a lot that were super out of date. And so if you have a library, add a Getter template.
Yes, and not just that, but I mean, I think that one thing that's missing in the Getter template space is, I don't have an answer for how to do this, but to help people organize them so that other people can see, that one's outdated, maybe I should update it.
Yeah.
Because unlike the JSON library that you love, that you maintain and nobody else does, of course there's thousands of them, for some reason, people have less of an attachment to Getter 8 templates. It's like a one-off thing. Somebody makes it, and maybe they update it once, and then everybody else finds it, and it's 2 years old, right? And that's not a good look. But other people are really happy to update those things. So if we could find a way together as a group of people to help each other, let other people update these Getter 8 templates, and put them in one place, perhaps where we can all find them, I think Getter 8 templates would be really amazing. I think that people would be like way more obsessed with them than we even are now. And people use them a lot.
We just need to slap a front end on that. There's a wiki page right now that's like, and search GitHub for the .g8 extension, and you might find some cool stuff.
So
it could be better.
What is missing? What do we need to do?
Organization.
Organization.
It's just organization.
Okay, so where do we get that from? Heather?
It's a good question. I don't want to say, hey, let's build another tool. But because I don't want to be the one that has ridiculous idea, but I mean I'm sure somebody could come up with a cool idea for trying to keep these things in one place and make it possible for other people to update them more easily. It's got to be a way.
So if anyone would like to volunteer that, it's a serious, completely serious suggestion.
I'll volunteer. I'll do it.
No.
No, seriously, I will.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll organize that.
That's amazing. I thought you were gonna. I wasn't sure you were serious.
No, that's something I can actually do, is
That's
organize Git 8 templates.
That's
Organization's my jam.
If anyone would like to help Kelly, speak to her.
Yeah.
And
What's up?
we've achieved something. So Daniela has the mic. Please ask us a question.
So we spoke about direct donation to the Scala Center being difficult. So something that I've noticed from the Python community, what they do is that they organize conferences that are called PyCon, that are totally community driven, and everyone pays the ticket, and all the money that is raised goes to their equivalent Scala Center. Would that be an option for us?
So I actually looked a little bit about their funding model, and it's. So you can read there, because it's totally transparent, you can read their disclosures. I'm not sure that the amount that they get every year from PyCon, because they normally just give it to like one-off projects. They're like, here's 30K for a few months to work on this thingy, and they give it to just different people. What we have is something slightly different. We have people who are regularly employed, so they need a fixed amount, right, for the year. And I mean, in order to come up to that amount, we need maybe a more regular income than maybe one year. PyCon doesn't have we do it in a place that is less accessible, and there are fewer attendees, and then what happens? So I'm not sure that would work for at least the way that we do it right now. Doesn't mean that maybe we could reconfigure, but it seems a little more irregular and more like focused on paying for projects for a chunk for a period of time, rather than us where we have people and then we, sorry Scala Center engineers, we throw them at a problem. Sorry guys. But that's kind of how we do it, rather than throwing money at a problem and a person somewhere else.
Okay. Any other questions? There's a question, hand up over there. Can we send the mic over? And meanwhile, I will ask Adrian.
And we have a question here.
A question we had from Michael Gikaru, who said, are there any major plans for the Android platform? With Scala, I presume.
Next question. I know. I mean, like, is the Android platform planning to support Invoke Dynamic? I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
I know that people are using Scala 2.12 on Android. You have to kind of fuse some tools together that we don't all provide, like as a nice, pre-configured set of tools. So you have to do some retro lambdaing or something like that, or compile into dumber bytecode, I guess.
So there's a tool chain which exists, but there's no easy way of.
We don't really promote it. No, we could do better with that. I think for us,
It seems like
we were really. I mean, like to be honest, we just we have to move to Java 8. Like, there's just too much opportunity there for us not to go there. And once you go to Java 8 and the Android platform doesn't, you have to maintain a backend specifically for Android.
So it sounds like the decision to go to Java 8 has made it harder but not impossible.
It's not impossible. No, I mean,
work with Android.
You can recompile Java 8 bytecode down to whatever Android supports right now. I know that people are doing this. I haven't, deeply investigated it.
It seems like we need some effort to just make this a little bit more automated, a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And then Scala could dominate the Android platform.
Well, I mean, and there's more to it than that, I think. Some people made good points about the various native backends for different languages and what they're actually being used for. And for example, with Scala Native, you could compile your business logic to all the different backends that we have and compile it to whatever native code you would run on Android. And
so
then whatever
this is using
Scala Native
to compile to LLVM, which can then target.
I assume, yes. And you could then just you wouldn't develop your GUI in Scala. You would use whatever the platform tools are at your disposal, because there's more to it than just emitting the bytecode, right? You also need all the designer tools and all the. I don't know. I'm clearly showing that I'm not a mobile developer. But once you have the ability to deploy to that platform and your business logic is there, and that's the bulk of the code that you would share between your different applications. I think you want a native feel on the platform anyway, and that's so tightly coupled to all the other things on a platform that we can't really compete with that.
So we're not really going to ever be targeting front-end work on mobile, but
I mean, the question is, who is we? I mean,
right. Well, yeah.
I believe Lightband is a company that's focused on the server,
right?
On the JVM, basically. So that's essentially what their business model is, and I think they're not very interested in just porting Scala if it doesn't come with Akka and Lagom and the other stack, because essentially that's what they do. So it means, but Lightband is not the only company out there that does things. So, and we have the community, and so just by the fact that Lightband doesn't do something like an Android port doesn't mean doesn't mean that we think it's not important or we want to neglect it or anything.
So,
like
is there actually a business opportunity here for a startup that wants to provide Scala on Android or on mobile?
I don't think anybody's going to stop
maybe
anybody.
we can pull.
I think everybody get really excited about that.
Let's ask the audience what their experience is, like who does Android development and how do you do it?
So after the next question, which I think is over there, feel free to put your hand up and add any comment to that, because we'd be interested to hear. So the mic hopefully is over there now. Please go ahead.
Hey, so my question is kind of related to what Eugene alluded to. So like personal observation from the industry is that Spark is the gateway drug for Scala. And we are in this elephant in the room situation at the moment. And Spark is very much behind the current Scala releases. Scala is moving forward towards 3.
It's one for Boo.
What's going to happen? Are we going to help the Spark guys catch up? What can be done?
I think that's an extremely good question.
So for those of you that aren't familiar, Spark is still targeting Scala 2.11.
And Scala 2.11 was released how long ago, Adrian?
Can't remember.
So longer than the length of Adrian's memory.
Yeah, which is short these days, I admit.
But Scala 2.11 was like 4.
I think we have someone who knows very well suited to answer it.
So yeah, hold on, I think, or Boo.
Why would I know what
sorry, I was pointing at Boo, sorry.
Oh yeah, okay.
We were actually just talking about this during the start of the panel.
yeah, but in the part where the microphones were not live, perhaps more intentionally.
Yes, you're being recorded now.
Yes. Hello, boss person.
So it's worth pointing out there's work involved in migrating from Scala 2.11.
There is, but it's not insurmountable work. The amount of work is relatively small. I think the challenge has been in finding a way for our communities to work together, because some of the Spark community is perhaps less focused on the evolution of Scala than perhaps the people here wish we were. And I think it's work that we can find a way to do. And we'll probably talk about it at Scala Days New York. There's a Spark Summit next month before Scala Days New York. We're going to try and get some of the Spark people aligned, and then we'll try and solve this problem, like not the code part, but the human part of the problem in Scala Days New York, and then hopefully we can solve the code part maybe the month after. But of course, I'm an engineer, so take all of my estimates and like multiply by 12.
I mean, there's some progress, right? Like I think, at least, so Reynold popped up on the Scala contributor forums and started working through with, I can't remember, somebody else that, from the Spark group. And Adrian and Jason popped in, and there was some discussion about, this is SAMs and all of that, but I mean, it seemed like, movement, which is step 0.
Yeah, so I mean, since we're on the record, like we talked to them from before 2.12 was a thing, and we were kind of not entirely maybe in agreement on how we wanted to do things, but we were very much involved in those discussions, and they have very different ABI constraints than most Scala projects, where I understand that like the Scala defined thing is consumed. Different Scala versions have to be consumed by Java and so on, and so the solutions that we had for them that work for most Scala projects migrating to 2.12 weren't really solutions to them. And I mean, number B on the record is we're happy to help. You know, we offered help, and I think it's true that it's a social problem to find the time to sit together and figure it out.
Is the problem that Scala 2.11 is good enough? Then
that's a huge problem. Yeah.
You did it so well 4 or 5 years ago.
So I want to say, as one of the, so I'm a Spark developer, but the community is complicated in similar ways to how the Scala community is complicated. So when you say you talk to them, you probably talk to the people at one of the primary companies. You talk to the Lightbend equivalent for Spark. Yeah, you talk to Databricks. And I no longer work for Databricks. But I work for someone else, and I still work on Spark. And so, where was I going with this before I put my foot in my mouth?
You didn't talk to everybody is the argument, right?
No, but there was a thing. Fuck, okay. Damn it.
Yeah, some clapping and it'll come. Yeah.
Nah,
something about Spark.
I mean, I think you're going to talk about like the tensions between like the different communities, and Scala is a small one, and they have lots of other fires to fight. Maybe something along those lines.
I think that's true. I think. So no, as an ML developer, there's a bunch of things in Scala 2.12 that I really want, and like there's in Scala 2.11, there's some like really annoying helpfulness with macros, and. I can't use them right now, and so I want us to upgrade. So there are people in the community.
We hear that a lot.
Who really want to upgrade, and so it's about. We use consensus voting, which is great. So we have to have a consensus.
So casting our minds forward, maybe 3 years when Dotty is available, Scala 3 is available, and Spark has made it onto Scala 2.12 by then, possibly. will it be easier?
As a moderator, you're supposed to be neutral and just like ask questions.
It's all speculation. You're free to contradict. Let's optimistically assume Spark's made it to Scala 2.12, and
that's better.
Will it be? Does the panel think it'll be easier or harder to get onto Dotty?
I actually think it'll be easier. Part of the things that they're struggling with were like low-level platform things that the way that we encode lambdas did change pretty fundamentally. That's what I talked about earlier also, which is difficult with Android now, and that won't change for the foreseeable future. So I think, I don't know. I doubt it would be harder. The thing that remains hard is the ecosystem, right? Spark has a ton of dependencies. I think most of them have upgraded by now.
They have. We have no more blocking dependencies.
For a while, that was a really good excuse. Now it's just you guys. Yeah.
But on that note,
Holden isn't the entire community.
No, I meant it's a Californianism that I picked up while I lived there. It means other people.
Okay.
But on that note about the
maybe I always misunderstood. I don't know.
But on that note about the ecosystem, Adrian mentioned that so perhaps it's going to be easier to.
It's your boss.
For the.
Wait, what?
So, so Adrian made this point about the ecosystem, and perhaps you'll have Spark that has umpteen zillion dependencies, and maybe it can't move. Maybe the Spark source code might be easier to migrate from Scala to whatever to Scala 3 because there are fewer low-level platform details that have to be worked out. But if this is an issue, this is something that as a community we don't have to leave to Databricks or Lightbend or choose a company alone. I think that a lot of people who are maintainers of open source projects, even like some library that's not frequently updated that Spark depends on, the people who maintain that thing infrequently would be extremely thankful. And then some subset of the Spark community and the Scala community would be extremely thankful if somebody helped them upgrade. And anybody can help a library upgrade. So this is just a general point. If you have a GitHub account, you can help any library upgrade. As a community, I think we, when these things start happening, I think we should just keep that in mind. We can all help.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience? Second,
I think
second
someone
row.
has the mic.
no,
Oh,
we're
sorry.
waiting.
And there's
Much
someone in the back
too
and
long.
somewhere there.
Can you wave at me so I can see you?
Over there.
Over there, yes.
Yes, hi. I'm going to switch the topic. I have some question because I had some discussion about how to teach programming, and especially what language to choose. And you can use object orientation for that, and you can use like functional programming or even Prolog or something. And I think that's quite important because it has an impact on about how people think about programming in general. And a lot of languages that are used to do that have a restricted feature set or something, which is certainly not true for Scala. So the question is, how good is Scala to learn programming, like first learn programming? Why not? What are your thoughts on that?
So Heather, you did a roundtable discussion on this.
Actually, Martin had answered a similar question. And I mean, I could rephrase the answer, or I could just point at him and make him say it again.
Go for it, Martin.
Okay, so I definitely wouldn't do object-oriented or logic programming in first year. I think functional programming is definitely something very promising. The one thing where I'm not sure is that, I mean, if you get the first time your hands on a computer, maybe you want to sort of have an easy way to manipulate things like, I don't know, real things, little robots or things like that. So you will have to deal with the boundary where computers do things rather than compute functions fairly quickly. But that said, I probably would start with functional and then after some months, 8 weeks or something like that, introduce imperative in order not to be essentially too much on the functional side. And I believe Scala is an excellent language for that. It's definitely bigger than some of the academic languages like Scheme, but I guess Scheme isn't taught that much anymore. But it's actually smaller than essentially all the commercial choices out there. So in terms of essentially features to teach, I believe Scala is actually more regular and smaller, and it makes a very nice teaching language. So I know some universities who teach it in first year, but I think it's not enough. I mean, there should be many more. And right now, the trend seems to be very much towards Python in first year, which is also a very, very decent teaching language. And there the question is just essentially, do you want to start with dynamic languages, or do you want to introduce types first? And there it very much depends, essentially, are types something that help you program, or types that are a hurdle to overcome? And I believe if you do it the right way, then types actually help you program. Like if you start programming, let's say, with a REPL, then typically is you write the expression, the REPL writes the types and the answers, and I mean, the more info you have about what you do, particularly at the beginning, the better. So types definitely can help if it's done the right way. But
so you heard it here first. Types can help.
And they came first.
Can we send the microphone over here? And meanwhile, I will.
There's a microphone already.
Oh, already there.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it then.
Yeah, when you have this transition from Scala 2 to Scala 3, that will kind of break a lot of things. And we have seen it like in Python community and in Perl community, that they did this switch to Perl 6 or Python 3, and they essentially ended up maintaining the previous version forever. So what is Scala's way to deal with this issue, especially if you say you have difficulty financing and manning or having people for doing already the stuff that you need to do now?
So this was a very popular question on Twitter as well. Is Scala going the Python way with 2.x and Dotty? So this was addressed partly in the keynote.
Yeah. I'll let Martin answer, but I'll say job security first, and then you can go.
Okay. Yeah. So I believe the big game changer here is really static types, which gives you very fine-grained rewrite tools that you can apply to your code, and you can essentially rewrite your code with a lot more confidence than in a case like Perl or Python, where, of course, I can rewrite my code, but then, I mean, how do I know the thing is still correct? And one guideline for us is to be super, super careful, and if we can avoid it at all, right now we are about 90% towards that goal, is to change runtime behavior, because that's precisely the problematic point that we say, well, it's sort of one thing to say you have to express yourself slightly differently here, and if not, then you will get a type error, and there will hopefully be a rewrite tool that actually does it for you automatically to bring code across, or if not, then maybe you will have to do maybe one change per 1,000 lines or something like that. That's the goal. And it's a completely different thing to say, well, rewrite your program and then have good luck debugging it because it won't work anymore and you have to figure out what it is. So I think that plays in our favor, and I believe that actually makes the whole thing feasible. So that's my hope.
Do you have any concern that providing Tasty, which allows people to continue running Scala 2 as for macros, for example, does that remove the pressure from upgrading and force us into a situation where we are maintaining Scala 2? Well, this is maybe to Adrian more, but...
It removes a little bit of pressure initially, which I think is good because it gives us a longer runway to kind of, bootstrap the ecosystem and gradually introduce Scala 3 while, for every Scala release, the problem is you have to get all your dependencies upgraded or you can't upgrade. Wouldn't it be great if you already can start using Scala 3 even while you're still using a few 2.14 dependencies in there, and then gradually they start getting replaced.
So we have a window of transition of several years?
Well, that's something that the history books will record eventually.
Well,
I'm sure.
For Python, the history books are still incomplete.
Still being written, yes.
Well, 10 years in. And
we've been warned, and I think,
yes.
like the point that Martin makes is an important one, and the other one is that we've been warned. We've seen what happens in Python 3, and I think, with all respect, there's a lot of kind of gratuitous changes maybe that users didn't see the benefit of that snuck into Python 3 that end up accumulating to a huge paper cut. Like, we can do a few ones, but eventually you die if you get enough of them. And so we've known this for a long time and worried about this, believe me, for a long time. And so we've been trying to introduce those smaller changes ahead of time. So we're not, saving them up for 3.0. And it's like, hey, here's a bunch of random stuff. We're giving you the random stuff now. You've already upgraded to 2.12, so some of the random stuff is in there. Like 2.13, like I said during the keynote, actually my talk, which is kind of like a keynote.
Tell yourself that.
Well, it was my first real Scala Days talk, so don't bring me down. It was, now I lost my train of thought. Anyway, so like the collection library is already like in 2.13. Our commitment is that actually the standard library between 2.14 and 3.0 will be identical. Which is kind of a requirement if you're going to, use Tasty to cross-compile. Like if the library is different, you're still, not going to be able to interoperate between different versions. All the exciting stuff will come in 3.0, and all the kind of boring paper cutty stuff is coming. That's my job.
Okay, so we've got time for one more question from the audience. If anybody has any more questions. Right, the hand went up over there that I saw.
There's another in the back there too.
Well, that's two, but
yeah,
this one. Let's see what
we'll give
happens.
very short answers this time.
This one over here will be first, but meanwhile, I'm going to ask Kelly a question because you've been quiet.
I think he has the microphone already, though.
Too soon. I've got a question for Kelly. So this one came in on Twitter. What can we do to be more inclusive in the Scala community? What are we doing badly or doing wrong?
I'm going to focus on actionable things. I think education is a big part of it. Tutorials, docs, that kind of stuff matters. And there's tools out there that help with this. I think we all can write tutorials for the stuff that we do. I think educating our peers on how to use Scala in a way that solves real problems is important, and not just how you applied free functors and tagless final to your latest project because you felt like it. I think we see a lot of conference talks that are doing that kind of stuff, and this is something that I've focused on a lot in the last couple of years, is people that want to write Scala for the sake of writing fun code, and not fun in the sense of functional, but fun in the sense of they get enjoyment out of it. And that's fine. I love to code too, but especially for our day jobs, most of us are trying to solve problems. And I think focusing Scala back on solving problems and the tools that we can use to do that, and sharing the knowledge through blog posts, tutorials, conference talks that fall into that blue sky area. So we have all the tutorials that are like how to do hello world in Scala, and then it jumps to like how to do free monads in Scala. And so this is something that...
There is some space between those.
Yeah, so this is something that Jessica Kerr called out like 3 or 4 years ago at a Scala exchange, which is this idea of blue sky Scala, and there's not enough of that. And I think there's this intermediate gap that a lot of people are aware of like, okay, I know how to like write an API in Scala, or maybe like my first, hello world function, but where do I go from here? And I think that's some of the stuff that we're missing, and that's going to help make the community more inclusive, because that's going to increase the knowledge gap of people that aren't doing category theory for fun.
So do you think there's an overrepresentation in, for example, conference talks of some of the more advanced stuff that only appeals to... But is the solution to stop doing that, or to just promote the call it easier, or more practical, pragmatic even?
I mean, I think it's interesting. Like the stuff that I've talked about has to do with like the more pragmatic stuff, and I feel like people always are coming up to me like, "Oh my gosh, I wish more people would talk about this," and I'm like, "You should!" Like I try to encourage other people to do this, and so I do think there's an overrepresentation. I think that's interesting to folks, and I don't think that should go away. But I think, especially at events like Scala Days that have a much more broad audience, that we should see more of the project-based, the more how I solve this problem type talks.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So there was a question over there, and there's another one over there. We're going to take both of them, but these will be the last two. So please go ahead.
My question is to all the speakers. I'd like to know, can you recommend a book everyone here should read on Scala or computer science, maybe?
So, book recommendations.
One title from left to right.
Well, I know that one of them is Learning How to Bark by Boo.
Right. The royalties are insane on that one. Yeah.
So High Performance Spark is not directly about Scala, but I do make a lot of money on it.
For the record, I recommended this book to my students, and it was useful. They liked it.
Thank you.
That's where all those sales are coming from every semester.
So, that was.
Yeah, if anyone's a professor, please make it required reading.
Martin,
I'm also partial, so I skip.
Okay, just read my thesis or something. It's free.
I think I'm the only one here that hasn't written a book, so. Blog posts are great. I can't read an entire book, so go find a blog post.
Okay.
I like, I think the Programming in Scala book. There's a few of these books that like everybody kind of already knows, but one book that maybe is not so popular that everybody talks about all the time is, I think the Scala Cookbook is really nice. By Alvin Alexander. It's like this big, and it's really nice. If you forget how to read some stuff in from a file, it will show you. All these cute little things.
He has a really great blog, and every time I Google how to do something in Scala, it almost always ends up on Alvin Alexander's blog.
Yeah, so it's very hands-on.
Okay, so a number of suggestions there, and a final question, which hopefully is somewhere in that area. Do you have the microphone? Oh, can the microphone head that way, please? Oh, it's Eugene. I didn't realize it was you.
Yeah, so second question, I guess.
First,
I want to just thank the panel for the great discussions. And the question is, would Scala 3 be the last binary compatibility breaking Scala? Because a lot of the discussion we talked about today is sort of like that, right? So what if we're really successful in year 2021 or 22? Would the library now be released into still the Maven Central in the form of Tasty? And would we still be talking about, let's say, Spark migration for Scala 3.1? Like, how does the library ecosystem actually look like?
It's a good question.
So that's really the idea or the vision. That would be great if we could pull it off, that all artifacts are published as Tasty, and that means we essentially have complete control of binary compatibility, and we can actually then fix the problem once and for all. Of course, it still requires a lot of discipline. That means you have to essentially evolve the format only in a backwards compatible way. Essentially just what Oracle does with the Java platform. And also for libraries, I mean, there would be certain rules still that you can't just rename a method or something like that. That obviously wouldn't be binary compatible. But I mean, all the other stuff that we have now sort of forced on us, where essentially adding a new val to a trait is a binary incompatible change. All that is essentially the semantic gap between what we want to express in Scala and how we encode it in the JVM. And these things, these sort of accidental breakages, we can avoid all of them, and I think that's definitely would be a great goal to achieve.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I agree. I think it's also a pity to stop removing stuff and stop changing things. So I think there's a cultural aspect to it as well. I think that, you know, all those people advocating mono repos and source dependencies, like, you're basically taking this on implicitly, saying, like, I'm just going to evolve my code along with everyone else's. So if we move towards a world that's more like that, then we probably actually will see more breakage.
So more breakage, but also more fluidity, migration, and better tooling.
Yeah. I don't have, Well, I mean, I think it's a scary world, actually, to do it that way. But I think we have to find some compromise between being able to still remove stuff, and maybe deprecation cycles are enough. But I'm very excited to get rid of the gratuitous binary incompatibilities that we suffer now.
Do you think that the experience that we're all going to go through of migrating from Scala 2.x to Scala 3 will give us the tooling we need for compatibility and migration to be just much less of an issue for us in the future? It's going to teach us and force us to develop it.
Yeah, I mean, so as engineers, we always focus on, you know, how can we fix this with more technology, right? And so Scala fix is another interesting thing. Like, libraries could come with their own recipes on how to upgrade to the next version. You know, I'm just looking at the time. We can, I guess, keep talking about this, but I don't know how strict we are in Germany on like ending times and stuff.
Well, I think if anyone else has anything else to say on that particular question, you're welcome to now. If not, then
Martin would like to.
Maybe one more comment.
You can have the final word.
Okay, on the evolution part. So let's say, okay, we want to sometimes evolve libraries in backwards incompatible ways. Again, the great promise of Tasty is that because Tasty is the format for essentially all our meta-programming, the macros and everything, then it means you can take the published artifact and essentially publish a automatic rewrite tool that essentially brings this forward. You can do this, of course, with sources as well. You can publish the diffs, but then essentially you have to sort of appeal to everyone that they built this again, because source is in the world, at least on the JVM, that's not the world where you publish the artifacts. I think if you can do this with binary, then that's another big advantage. Of course, I don't want to say that we shouldn't also try with source. There's certain things we can only do with source, but I believe the more tools we have available for that, the better.
Great. So that is all we have time for, I'm afraid. That is the end of Scala Days Europe 2018. Sad noises. So I would like to finish by saying thank you to our panel, Heather Miller, Kelly Robinson, Adrian Moores, Martha Dursky, Holden Corral, and Boo.
And thank you, John, for the, as always, super professional moderation.
Thank you. And I would like to say thank you to the speakers. We've had many, many wonderful talks over the last few days, so please give them a round of applause. Thank you to the sponsors. I hope you've had a chance to speak to many of them while you've been here. They do make this event possible. Without them, it couldn't take place. So thank you to the sponsors. Thank you to the organisers, who you will see various positions around the room. Would you stand up if you're here? I hope you're still here.
They're in the back.
Yeah, so they're all in the back. Please turn around and give them a round of applause. Thank you to the Scala Centre for the support that they have provided, especially Daria. And finally, thank you to all of you. Thank you for coming, and I wish you all a safe journey home, wherever you may be going, and hopefully see some of you in New York for Scala Days in about a month's time, and some mystery location in Europe for Scala Days next year, wherever that may be. So thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you.